Welcome to episode 93 of the 3M Fair podcast. Ellerslie, Georgia was a quiet town in Harrison County in the United States. It was the kind of place where life moved slowly, where people spent their Sundays in church and their free time hunting or fishing. Today, their population is just over 1,000. But when the story took place, the town had almost 3,000 people. Ellerslie was a place that attracted older people. For the younger audience, Ellerslie didn't have much of an excitement. Most teenagers and young adults who lived there would go to Columbus, Georgia, where they had more fun things to do, more places to visit, more ways to have fun. So, this town, you can say, is a very quiet town. For those looking to settle down in like a small, nice cottage, Ellerslie was perfect. Looking at this in 1989, the Wyrick family moved to Ellerslie searching for a new start. Andrew and Lisa Wyrick, along with their 3-year-old daughter Heidi, were eager to begin the new chapter of their lives. They found themselves this cozy little home, simple but perfect for a young family. They were excited for what seemed to be a quiet town and a beautiful life ahead. At first, everything seemed normal. Heidi was a bright and imaginative child, and like many children her age, she had an imaginary friend. Studies say that by age 7, most of the children, at least 65% of the children, will have an imaginary friend. It's quite common, and as the child grows up, they just forget about this imaginary friend. So when Heidi started talking to her new imaginary friend, Andrew and Lisa didn't think much about it. They assumed that it was a way for her to adjust to this new change, this new house. But something about Heidi's imaginary friend was different. Lisa would often see her daughter playing in the backyard, smiling as she saw her running around and chattering excitedly. Heidi would have these long stretches of talks as if she was talking to a real human being. But when Lisa saw, no one was there. Lisa would go on to tell herself over and over again that this was normal. Kids have active imaginations, and it's not unusual. But still, there was something about this that made her uneasy. One day, Heidi came inside and casually mentioned her friend's name. "Who are you talking about, sweetheart?" Lisa asked. "Mr. Gordy," Heidi replied with a giggle. Lisa paused. That was an odd name for an imaginary friend. Now remember, Heidi was only 3 years old. Most kids her age would have imaginary friends with simple names like Jack or Tommy. But Mr. Gordy, that sounded like an adult's name, and that too a very difficult one for a 3-year-old to come up with. "What does he look like?" Lisa asked, trying to hide her unease. "He's an old man," Heidi said simply. "He has grey hair and wears a suit. He's really nice." The last sentence is what sent a chill down Lisa's spine. "He plays with me all the time," Heidi continued, twirling a strand of her hair around her finger. "He likes to push me on the swing." Lisa tried to brush it off. Kids made things up. Maybe Heidi had seen some old man trying to play with their grandchildren, and that's where she got this idea. That had to be it. But then things got stranger. Heidi would come inside with stories about how Mr. Gordy told her things that she shouldn't have known at her age. She would describe things about the house that even Lisa and Andrew hadn't noticed. And then one evening, Lisa heard Heidi laughing in her bedroom. She peeked inside and saw her daughter sitting on the floor, looking up, as if she was staring at someone. But the room was empty. "What's so funny, sweetheart?" Lisa asked, stepping inside. Heidi turned to her with the biggest and brightest smile she had seen. Mr. Gordy told me a joke. Lisa's stomach twisted. She tried telling herself again and again, but still, there was something wrong. Something about this house, about this town, felt off. Lisa was about to discover that her daughter's imaginary friend wasn't imaginary at all.
Hello and welcome to the 3am Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started.
Lisa Wyrick would often see her 3-year-old daughter Heidi out in the backyard chatting away with this imaginary friend. But the thing that began to trouble Lisa was how long these conversations were. Not just simple kid babble, but long drawn out talks, as if Heidi wasn't just pretending, but she was actually talking to someone. From then on, Mr. Gordy would become a regular topic in the house. Lisa and Heidi would go on walks around the neighborhood, and Lisa would notice something strange. Heidi would be holding Lisa's hand and walking, but while walking, Heidi would also lift her other hand. Her fingers would slightly curl as if she's holding on to someone else. Heidi, who are you holding hands with? Lisa asked one day, trying to act casual. Heidi looked up and smiled. Mr. Gordy. Lisa once again felt that fear. This wasn't normal. Heidi's hand was still in the air as if she was holding on to someone else's hand. Heidi continued to talk about her friend regularly. She would say Mr. Gordy met her by the swing set almost every day. She would talk about all these things like he was kind to her. Then came something even stranger. Heidi told her mom that Mr. Gordy said that there was money buried in the backyard. Lisa was taken aback. What child comes up with that kind of a lie? Ghost or no ghost, Lisa needed to know. Now I couldn't find any details to if Lisa actually dug up and tried to see if there was treasure or not, but she kind of believed on her daughter. Despite all this, Heidi seemed happy, not afraid. She wasn't scared. And so Lisa and her husband thought, let it go. Let Heidi have a friend. He wasn't hurting her. Maybe it's just a phase. Whenever Andy was away at work, it was just Lisa and Heidi at home. Lisa tried to be as supportive as possible, but she just couldn't let go of this feeling that something was wrong with her daughter. Looking at how much her daughter liked Mr. Gordy, Lisa decided to make a change. So during lunchtime, she would even go as far as to make an extra plate of food for Mr. Gordy, and she would place it right next to Heidi. They would all sit down together, but the third plate, it always sat there, untouched, cold. Lisa was just trying to be a good mom. She wanted Heidi to feel supported, especially after the move and everything that had changed. Even if Mr. Gordy wasn't real, he wasn't hurting anyone. That was all until another man came into the picture, a man named Con. One quiet afternoon, Lisa was in the kitchen making lunch while Heidi was playing in the living room. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was a soft, distant chime, Not as if their own doorbell rang, but as if a doorbell from the neighborhood rang. Lisa didn't think much about it. She assumed that maybe someone was delivering something to their neighbor. But before she could dry her hands, she heard the door again. And this time, it wasn't a doorbell, but it was Heidi at the door. And Heidi called out, "Hello?" Lisa's heart skipped a beat. Heidi had beaten her to the door. When Lisa got there, Heidi turned to her with a calm expression and said, "Mom, there's a man named Con at the door. He's all bloody. He's wearing a bloody shirt. His hand is hurt," Heidi said, as if it was no big deal. Lisa rushed to the front door and flung it open. There was no one standing there. No man, no blood, nothing. Panic started to set in. Even though she had not seen anyone, she was scared that maybe her daughter met someone. She immediately called her husband and told him to come home. Her voice was shaking. What if someone had tried to get Heidi out of the house? What if this man named Con was real, injured, and dangerous? When Andy got home, they searched the neighborhood together. They walked the streets, checked the bushes, knocked on a few doors, and asked people. But no one had seen a man. No blood on the pavement, no injured stranger, no man named Con. It was like he never existed. Soon after this incident, Lisa's sister Joyce would move into the house next door. That brought in a little peace to Lisa's mind, knowing that her sister was there. One evening, Lisa finally opened up to Joyce and told her everything. She talked about Heidi's imaginary friend Mr. Gordy, the man, Con, at the door who was covered in blood, and all the strange things that Heidi has been saying and doing since they had come to this house. Joyce listened quietly and then said, "Why don't you find out who lived in this house before you?" Lisa paused. It hadn't occurred to her. Maybe that Con person was looking for someone else. Maybe he was looking for someone who lived in this house before you, Joyce said. That made sense. Maybe it was kind of a mix-up. Maybe someone was trying to prank or look for someone who lived in this house before them. Whatever the truth was, Lisa was beginning to understand one terrifying fact. Something was wrong with this house, and it wasn't just Heidi's imagination anymore. For whatever reason, it was Lisa's sister Joyce who would end up taking the next step. Maybe it was instinct, maybe she felt that Lisa could not do it out of fear, but she ended up calling the real estate agent who had sold the house to Lisa and Andy. Joyce asked a very simple question. "Can you find out who lived in the house before my sister bought it?" A few days later, Joyce got a call back, and that's when she learned the truth. The real estate agent told her that the previous homeowner was a woman named Kelly. So Joyce reached out to Kelly, hoping to find out who these people are. Kelly agreed to meet over coffee, and Joyce asked if anything strange had happened in the house when Kelly lived there. Kelly shook her head slowly, like someone who had spent years trying to forget something. "Well," Kelly said, "the house before me belonged to a man named James Gordy. He was a real estate investor from Columbus, Georgia." Joyce's eyes widened. "Gordy?" she asked. "James Gordy?" Kelly nodded. "Yes, but he passed away back in 1974. James Gordy, Mr. Gordy, the same man that Heidi had been talking to, playing with, holding hands this entire time. The same imaginary friend who had told her about this buried money, who sat with her at lunch, walked around holding her hand. No one knew about the real Mr. Gordy and that he was dead, So, how did Heidi know about this? Joyce rushed to tell Lisa everything. "You are not going to believe this," she said. "Mr. Gordy was real. He lived in your house. But Lisa, he's been dead for over a decade." Lisa was shaken. Everything suddenly felt heavier and darker. But instead of panicking, she sat Heidi down and decided to tell her the truth. She explained that there was a man named Mr. Gordy who used to live in this house, but he has since passed away. It was a very difficult conversation, one that I don't think any parent had to have. What Lisa didn't expect was Heidi's response. "Can we go to see where Mr. Gordy is buried?" Heidi asked. Lisa didn't know what to say. How did Heidi even know about this? Still, something told her that she had to do what Heidi wanted. So, Lisa found out where James Gordy had been buried, and one sunny afternoon, she and Heidi would drive to the cemetery. As soon as the car rolled to a stop, before Lisa could even get the seatbelt off, Heidi opened the door and ran. She didn't hesitate, she didn't look around, she ran straight to a tombstone near the back corner of the graveyard. When Lisa caught up, she saw the name etched in stone: James S. Gordy. There it stood, and there stood Heidi, smiling softly, like she had just found her old friend. Heidi was only 3 years old. She couldn't read yet. She could barely write. But how is it that she knew how to read a gravestone? Or Lisa was not the one who took Heidi to the gravestone. Lisa was barely out of the car before Heidi ran and reached the gravestone. How did she know where to go? Still trying to wrap her mind around everything, Lisa decided to follow up with Kelly herself. She needed more answers. Kelly agreed. She came over and she brought with her a few old family photos. Lisa sat beside Heidi, hoping to see if her daughter could recognize anyone. Kelly handed them the photos one by one, and that's when Heidi's little finger shot out, pointing to one of the men in an image. "That's gone," she said. Kelly leaned in, her eyes widened. "Oh, that's not Con, sweetheart. That's Lon. He was my uncle." Kelly would go on to say that she had an uncle Lon who had lost his hand in a cotton gin accident. This could easily explain why Heidi saw this man at the door and he was injured and bleeding. But the most shocking part of all was that Lon had died in 1957, years before Heidi was even born. Now both Lisa and Andy were scared. Their daughter had somehow made contact with two people who had died years ago. There was no logical way to how was this possible, but it was possible. They felt helpless, unsure of how to protect their child. They didn't know what to do. Andy suggested maybe they could get a dog, and if Heidi was playing with someone real, then she could just forget about everyone else. And so they surprised her with a puppy. Heidi was overjoyed. She loved the dog. And for a brief period of time, things started to feel better. But that didn't last long. Soon, their dog started to act strangely. It would stand in the middle of the hallway, its fur bristling, eyes locked on something no one could see. It would growl, bark, sometimes refuse to move. Corners of the house, dark spaces between rooms, always the same. The dog would be growling and barking for no reason. And Lisa, who had tried so hard to keep things normal, began to feel like everything was slipping away. There was something that her daughter could see, and now the dog could sense. Whatever peace they hoped to find in this town was gone. As time passed, the strange happenings in the Wyrek house only grew. It started small with the dog. It would bark at corners of the room, growl down empty hallways, and freeze in place, hair standing as if someone had just rushed through it. Lisa watched, trying to convince herself that it was nothing. It was just nothing. Her arms would break out in goosebumps, and the air felt heavy, electric, wrong. Then, without warning, the dog ran away, and no one ever saw the dog again. Soon, Heidi wasn't the only one who was experiencing things. The house began to change. Kitchen cabinets would open and slam shut by themselves. Doors would creak even when the air was still. One day, Lisa sat on the couch in the living room, watching Heidi and one of her real friends playing next to her. They laughed and played with their toys. But Lisa had this feeling again, like she was not alone. Someone was watching. Before she could fully understand, an empty chair flipped around and slid across the room until it stopped right in front of the kids, like someone had just pulled up the chair to join the children. The sound scraped through the quiet room like nails on a chalkboard. Lisa stared, frozen. When she told Andy, he tried to comfort her, not because he didn't believe her, but because he himself did not know what to do. He knew that he had to stay calm. If he panicked, the whole family could fall apart. "It's probably nothing," he would say, but both of them knew that was a lie. At night, Lisa would lie in bed, trying to fall asleep, while Andy was already out cold. He could fall asleep in seconds. He would just close his eyes and there off he went. But Lisa, she couldn't sleep. Night after night, she would lay awake next to her sleeping husband, thinking about everything that was happening to her family. Every night, late in the night, as the house grew quiet, Lisa could hear something. Noises above her. Not just the ceiling, but noises right above her bed. At first, she thought that maybe it was a new house and so everything was settling in. But the more days passed, the more sure she became. Those were not noises of the house or any creaking. They were voices, whispers exactly. Low, deep voices talking to her, saying her name. Night after night, the voices returned. There was no way for her to tell Andy anything because he would be out cold. Around the same time, the family began attending a new church. Desperate and afraid, Lisa spoke to a pastor, asking him if he believed in ghosts. He told her, no, ghosts weren't real, but demons were. She did not expect that answer. Lisa now believed that demons whispered to her every night. They had been there. They had always been there. As time passed, Lisa was sure that they were not leaving. It became impossible for Lisa to sleep peacefully at night. She tried to brush it off as much as possible, told herself it was nothing, it was her imagination, or maybe she was just sleep deprived. But something deep down told her that it wasn't the house. She wasn't alone in that house. Today, everyone asks, why didn't they just move out? But it's not just easy for anyone to just pack up and leave. Moving takes money that this family didn't have. Something quite similar happened with the Perron family, the family whose story was in the original Conjuring movie. The family had stayed suffering with demons in their house for over a decade. Even Ed and Lorraine Warren couldn't help them. But they couldn't move because they had spent every single money they had in buying that house and that property, and now they had nothing. All they could do was wait for their children to grow up, find a job, and then they could move out. If you're interested, I'll link that episode in the description because it details every single thing that family went through. I'm sure that the Wyrick family also might have had some similar instances. They could not just pack up and leave. Over time, things began to change, especially for Heidi. What started as a small, harmless friendship with Mr. Gordy now shifted to something darker. Lisa was now pregnant with their second child, and she noticed a change in her daughter. Heidi had always talked about her ghostly friends like they were just that, friends. But now she started talking about someone else, something bad. She began referring to this as the dark figure. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't like Mr. Gordy. Heidi would describe it as a shadowy man with no face. He would appear in her room, standing motionless in the corner or by the bed. Whenever the dark figure showed up, the temperature would drop and it would become freezing cold, and Heidi was scared. One afternoon, while she was playing in her room, something pulled onto Heidi's hair so hard that she screamed and ran to her mother in tears. She said that this creature or this demon had pinched her. Lisa, panicked, called her sister Joyce to come. They searched the house from top to bottom. Joyce had come with her gun. They thought that maybe there was a real man in the house and they needed to be prepared. But as they searched the house, they realized it was empty. And then things got worse. One night, Heidi woke up with 3 long, deep scratches across her face. Lisa and Andy told themselves that maybe she had scratched herself in the sleep. But the next morning, Andy would wake up in pain. As he lifted his shirt, he found angry red scratches down his side, fresh and burning, the exact same type of scratches that Heidi had. And he had more on his face. That day, Heidi looked at her father and said, "The dark figure did it." Again, Andy tried to brush it off, but again the next night, it happened. Over and over again. And every single time it happened, Heidi would say the same thing. The dark figure did it. In 1994, Lisa gave birth to their second daughter, Jordan. It should have been a happy time, but instead, everything just felt darker. That same year, Lisa and Andy would reach out to someone who would finally give them some answers. And that person was a man named Dr. William Rawle. Dr. Rawle was a parapsychologist, someone who studied paranormal activity. The family was ready to hear whatever he had to say. When Dr. William Rawle finally came to the house, Lisa and Andy told him everything, every single detail. They told him about Mr. Gordy, they told him about the scratches, whispers in the dark, the shadowy figure, Lon, whom their daughter referred to as Con, everything. Dr. Rawle was skeptical. He had heard a lot of stories before. People usually came to him saying that their house was haunted, but in the end, it just ended up being just that, their thinking. He thought that maybe Heidi was hallucinating, or maybe she was a very imaginative child and she was imagining everything. And so when he came to meet the family, he came prepared. The parents had already given him the photos, so when he came, he brought several photographs of random people. He mixed all the photos, making sure that Mr. Gordy's picture was inside, and if Heidi really knew him, she could recognize him. He sat down with Heidi and handed her the photos and asked her to look through them. Without hesitation, Heidi picked out the photo of Mr. Gordy. She pointed to it and said, That's him. That's my friend. Dr. Roll was stunned. He still wasn't convinced of the supernatural. There was one thing that no one could explain: those scratches. How is it that Haiti and Andy got scratches on them? He had no answer for that, but he was sure that the Wyrick family was not haunted. And so he just said it is Haiti's imagination. But the family was convinced. Haiti continued to see Mr. Gordy almost every day until she was 8 years old. To her, he wasn't a scary person. He was like a guardian angel who was protecting her from this big bad wolf. Word about the haunting began to spread, and media got wind of the situation, and everyone wanted to come to the Wyrick house to see the ghost. A reporter even came out to the house to do a story. But the moment he stepped out of his car, he said that he felt this heavy, sickening wave, like something was wrong. And he just turned and went back. People started talking, and soon everyone knew that Haiti had ghostly visitors, and that gave her a lot of attention. She started asking questions no child should have to ask. Why me? No one had an answer to that. Lisa and her sister Joyce began looking deeper, trying to piece it all together. And that's when something clicked. They remembered their mother. She used to talk about spirits. She would say these stories about things that she saw. But Lisa and Joyce always thought that their mother was exaggerating. She was embarrassing them. They never believed her. But now that Haiti was saying the exact same things that their mother had at one point, they realized that maybe their mother was not crazy. Initially, they had thought that maybe this was a generational curse, but now that they think about it, maybe it wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a gift, one that was passed down through generations. A gift that no one had asked for, but they couldn't understand. One thing was sure, Haiti wasn't alone, and whatever was in the house wasn't finished with her. After Lisa and Joyce had this heart-to-heart talk about their family's history, something changed. It was as if they had opened a door, not just a conversation, but had opened a door. And then, whatever was happening to Haiti started happening to Jordan, Haiti's little sister. She had just turned 3 years old, the exact same age that Haiti was when she first started talking to Mr. Gordy. One day, as Lisa was walking past Jordan's room, she stopped. Jordan was sitting alone, but she was talking. Her lips moved like she was talking to someone who was right next to her. But Lisa couldn't see anyone. Lisa asked softly, "Jordan, whom are you talking to?" Without hesitation, Jordan said, "I'm playing with my new friend. She's a little girl." Lisa felt that exact fear she felt the first time when Haiti had told her about Mr. Gordy. Later, Haiti would come to her and say that she also saw a little girl in this house and she had seen her sister playing with this little girl. Haiti said that the spirit of this little girl was very nice. Still, Lisa wasn't taking any chances. She once again called Dr. William Roll and asked him to come home. This time, for reasons he couldn't explain, Dr. Roll told the family that he believed Haiti. Maybe he believed that she had psychic abilities, that she could talk to people. She had a sixth sense. He believed that the gift ran in the family, that Lisa, Joyce, their mother, maybe even their grandmother, could have this gift of seeing the unseen. To confirm his suspicion, Dr. Roll called in a trusted psychic, someone he knew well. She had never met the family before, she had no information about them. All she had to do was come into the house and say if she saw something. And the moment she stepped inside the house, she felt it. She immediately sensed this presence of a little girl in the house, and she told that there was another person, an older man, who was looking after the girls. And then, at one spot, she stopped and said, "There's a dark spirit here." She moved to another area and again said, "There's a dark spirit here too." And once more, in a different part of the house, for the third time, "There's a third one, another dark spirit." She sensed 3 dark spirits in that house. One of them, she said, had no face and was very close to Heidi. The family stood there, cold dread creeping in. The dark figure again, the one that Heidi had described, the faceless shadow that scratched and terrified her. The psychic had no idea who these dark spirits were, and that is all the information that the family could get. After all of this, Lisa and Andy were sure that their daughter was not lying. But they wanted to know more, and that's why they reached out to another psychic, someone who was not connected to anyone they knew. They wanted the psychic to come in again with no information and to tell them if there was someone in the house. And so, once again, the Wyrick family waited, hoping that this time they could finally understand what was haunting their home. The psychic didn't ask many questions. She simply walked through the home quietly, as if trying to listen to something, observing, feeling, and then she spoke. She told the family that there were 3 demonic entities inside their home. 3. The psychic moved from room to room, her voice calm, but her words scaring Lisa and Andy. She said that one of the entities was trying to settle into Jordan's room, the room of their youngest daughter. She then walked to Heidi's room and then said, "There is another entity here." But it wasn't alone. She said that there was a good spirit with it. And the family immediately thought of Mr. Gordy. He was protecting Heidi. Finally, the psychic walked into the living room and then towards Lisa and Andy's bedroom. She said that there was a third demonic spirit, and this demonic spirit was walking back and forth into the 2 rooms. And then the demonic spirit went above their head, like floating above their head. Lisa's blood went cold. The whispers that she heard at night, cold, heavy presence that had kept her awake for months. That was a demon. Why was this happening? Where were they coming from? How did they get in? The family asked the psychic. The answer that the psychic gave them shook them. She said that the house had a portal, an open doorway between the spirit world and the living world. An invisible hole had opened up, and that is what was letting all these evil things in. Not just anything, dark things, dangerous things. She told them that the portal was located in their fireplace. With this horrifying knowledge, the family turned to someone that they trusted, their pastor, the same pastor who had told Lisa years ago that ghosts weren't real, but demons were. Now the pastor agreed to come to the house. He performed a cleansing, a spiritual blessing of the home, trying to get the spirits away. The ritual was quiet and serious. Prayers were whispered, holy water was sprinkled, and when it was over, the pastor left. For a long period of time after that, the house felt still. The family hoped that it was all over. But when it comes to portals and demons, it's rarely over, especially when your children can see spirits. Unfortunately for the Wyrick family, the blessings didn't stop anything. One night, Heidi was asleep in her room when something woke her up. She said that it was a terrible feeling. One of those feelings when your stomach drops, your heart races, you know that something is out there. The house was quiet, dark. Her parents were asleep, but Heidi could feel like something was there at the foot of her bed. She started to scream, and before her parents could even reach her, something grabbed Heidi by her ankles and lifted her straight into the air, upside down. When Lisa and Andy burst into the room, they stopped in their tracks. Their daughter was hanging in the air, upside down. Something was holding Heidi, and they couldn't see it. It was then that the Wyrick family realized they had reached their limit. They couldn't take it anymore. The fear, the trauma, the uncertainty, it was all too much. They decided to leave their house. They packed up their things, sold the house, hoping that whatever was haunting them would not follow. Unfortunately for Heidi, the experiences didn't end. As she grew older, she continued to see more and more spirits. Some were dark and some were good. Eventually, Heidi would go to college, she got married, she had children of her own. But still, to this day, she says that wherever she goes, the paranormal follows her. The haunting of the Wyrick family remains one of the most well-known and chilling stories in Georgia. In 2002, a movie called A Haunting in Georgia was loosely based on this experience. And then in 2013, a story inspired The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia was released. But no matter how many movies were made, how many books were written, this would always be a very big mystery. Even with all the media attention, Heidi tried to have a normal life. She got married to her husband Aaron and started a career in the medical field. Heidi said that over time she started to live with her gift. She would ignore the bad spirits, live with the good ones. Heidi would go on to say that initially she was very scared, but then everything seemed normal. This was her life. I tried to search during my research, but unfortunately I couldn't find anywhere. That is, if Heidi, her sister Jordan, if her grandmother, her great-grandmother could all see spirits, why not her mother? I could not find the answer to this question. Why couldn't Lisa see the spirits? If the spirit was right there, roaming on top of her in the middle of the night, why couldn't Lisa see the spirit? And there are no details to what happened to Mr. Con, or Mr. Lon to be exact. Mr. Gordy of course stayed with them, but there is no details to what happened to Mr. Lon. With this, we end this week's episode. I'm currently doing my research on the cult of Rajneeshpuram. There is a lot to research in that case, so hopefully if I finish it, we'll have it in the next week. Until then, stay kind, stay safe out there, and see you next week. A big thank you to all my fellow listeners who have been listening and supporting this episode. Your reviews, your listens mean a lot. If you love this episode, if you love the stories that I put out, then please do leave a rating on whichever podcasting platform you're listening from. It would really mean the world to me. Other than this, I also have a YouTube and an Instagram page. I'll link it in the description. Do check it out. I have different stories on Instagram and I'm planning to put out some short horror stories on YouTube. So do subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned. I am also an author, love fiction stories. If you want to check out my free fiction book, I'll link it in the description. I'll also link my other account in the description where I talk about fiction writing, travel, and I also will soon start sharing fiction stories. So stay tuned. So do follow me there. Thank you so much for everything. That's all for this week. Stay kind, stay safe, and see you next week.